Hi, I'm Joe with Gramophone, and today we're lucky enough to be talking about the Denon DP-3000NE turntable, which is an awesome new product for Denon. And even luckier that we're able to be here today with Emmanuel Millot from Denon. Emmanuel, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to be able to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today. So looking forward to the discussion.
Very good. And since you have a senior management position in terms of product management, you are really somebody who knows a lot about this wonderful new product. And I guess my first question for you to share with our viewers is not really a technical one at all, but a little bit more. This is clearly Denon's best effort ever with the turntable. And we'd like to know just a little bit more kind of maybe the back end story about what you were thinking about, why you wanted to develop products like this one. What were the strategic objectives you guys were going for?
Yeah, sure. So I would say you're probably familiar with, or if you're familiar with the Denon brand, which is now, 115 years old almost. So it initially started from recording turntable when it was founded in Japan initially. So Denon actually had a very, very long history around the turntable. And I believe it was in 1972 when Denon introduced its first, I would say, consumer-friendly turntable. Before that, they were addressing more professional solution for recording studio, and they really built an amazing reputation in that space. So we always have been manufacturing turntable and probably paying less attention to them in the last 20 years. But actually, Denon being a Japanese brand, we always had a strong presence in turntable in Japan. And those products were only sold in the Japanese market, all the premium turntable, like recently the DP-3000NE Mark II or the DP-500, which are products that if you're not familiar with the Japan market, you'd never heard about. And during COVID time, and even before that, we've seen that massive, I would say, resurgence of turntable or whatever. And the Japanese market was keeping on asking, hey, can we get a new turntable? We need a new Denon premium turntable. And we look at that as an opportunity to reestablish, I would say, Denon in the premium segment of turntable, and not only make a product for the Japanese market, make a global product. And what you see now with the DP-3000NE is exactly that. So we took all that knowledge we always had within the company to reestablish our position in the premium market globally, because in Japan, it was always there.
Right. And I think you have, by the way, hit the nail on the head when you've said a resurgence in vinyl. What we're seeing, certainly in the US market, is that not only are people who are perhaps audiophiles or more of the older generation really showing a resurgence in their interest, but young people are coming to vinyl in numbers that are kind of shocking us. So I think this is really a very appropriate time for Denon to be reestablishing their position with a higher end turntable. So Emmanuel, actually the story of how Denon was founded is a pretty fascinating one. Can you share with us just a little bit?
Yeah, no problem. So actually, as I mentioned earlier, the company was founded in 1910. So it was founded in Japan, but it was actually founded by an American living in Japan. And initially it was named Nippon Columbia. And they were actually manufacturing, I would say, record device and turntable already at that time. And that's how the whole story evolved through time or whatever. So it's if we had a lot of time, we can go through the whole history because there's been many different steps. But what is interesting is from the start, and Nippon Columbia slogan was actually music for Japanese family. And they were manufacturing and also I would say, printing record in the Japanese market and manufacturing playback devices for those records.
So now we can maybe start talking, if it's okay with you, about some of the particulars about this new turntable. The first thing, of course, that I noticed when you got us a sample of the DP-3000NE, it is heavy. So maybe you can talk a little bit about it and the engineering of it, how this came to be, and some benefits that you could say or share with us about its mass and its weight.
Yeah, so there's two elements in the weight. The first one is, of course, the chassis of the whole unit, which is solid MDF. So already by definition, this is really, really heavy. And then when you had the motor and the platter, it's even more heavier, of course. But the idea there is also we wanted to make a statement piece. And you know that by adding mass to the product, whatever, you also ensure better stability of the whole unit. So it's really, really important for Turntable, because with that weight also you isolate even the product a little bit more for vibration, which of course could impact playback. So actually we never constrain ourselves saying, hey, we want to achieve that weight or whatever. We just built the product as we thought it needed to be built. And it ended up with, yes, a product which is pretty heavy at the end. But I think it's also a gauge of quality. And I think for turntable enthusiasts or whatever, that's what they're looking for, because it really isolate the product even more from stability.
Yes, rotational stability in a turntable is absolutely crucial for a listening experience, the way I think of it, that seems almost as though the band members are aware of playing with each other on the same beat, because the more rotational stability problems you have, the more it doesn't really sound like a cohesive musical whole, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And we'll get into that in the detail of the motor and how we handle the motor, because that was also something which is interesting, because if you think about it, turntable, there's nothing really new around turntable. They've been there forever and they're looking around, but we challenge ourselves in trying to find new things and how we can even further improve what we were doing. And I think we're going to get there with direct drive, which is a kind of Denon things. And the idea was there also how by making this new statement piece, we can even bring that further and really ensure a perfect playback and by an accurate speed of the platter.
We've seen many high-end products now in turntables, both in direct drive and belt drive camps. So if you can talk just a little bit about the decision to manufacture this as a direct drive turntable and not as a belt drive.
Yes, correct. So I mentioned earlier a little bit about the Denon history, and Denon actually started in broadcasting and recording studio at the time. And one of the requirements at the time was actually to be able to get to speed as fast as possible, right? Because the DG wanted to press the play button and then within a fraction of a second or whatever, you had the platter at the full speed. And that's why Denon chose direct drive as a solution for that, because it was the perfect way to be able to achieve that. And if you look through the history of Denon, we always had direct drive. Of course, direct drive is a much more expensive solution or whatever. So when you go to our entry-level turntable, we have belt drive, or we have different solution. But for that premium statement piece, we wanted to go back to the direct drive. And it's actually, I don't know if you had a chance to play with it or whatever, it's one of the things when you push the play or the start button or whatever, it gets to speed almost instantly. So you don't have to wait any time or any, the things getting to speed at some point or whatever. So that's why Denon believe in direct drive from the start.
So now, if you don't mind, Emmanuel, we'll talk a little bit about the tone arm. I believe the tone arm is cast aluminum, but I also believe that when you move the tone arm there, it really feels like a quality product, even before you have listened, to the first record that you've put on the Platter. So maybe you can just talk a little bit about the tone arm and also the gimbals and bearings and so forth that make up that tone arm assembly.
The arm itself is aluminum extrusion. The other part, there is some part which are cast also as well. So one of the things also in the philosophy of Denon, it's actually to try to achieve, I would almost say, the more simple design at the end, because the part you had, the more small screw or things you had, the more complicated get to balance everything and so on. So that's always been the philosophy of Denon when doing the tone arm. And I don't know if you received the PowerPoint presentation I shared. There's actually a picture with all the parts of the tone arm that you can look at, and you will see there is not that many parts in that tone arm in the end. And that's what Denon always been, building behind and improving or whatever to ensure that. But at the end, also we're also using all the premium bearing and all of that to ensure that smooth operation of the tone arm. And then also, of course, what is important, I think we're going to get there maybe after, is all the possible adjustment you can have depending on what type of cartridge you want to use and the weight and all of that. You have that perfect balance and that perfect track tracking of the vinyl when you're playing also as well. So there's a lot of things involved that, and it's the beauty, I would say, of that tone arm. There's a lot of control, but in a very, very almost simple design at the end with, a minimum part requirements.
Yes, in some ways, of course, simple is better because the fewer parts, the fewer things there are to go wrong, and the more that you can invest in quality parts at each step of the way, right?
Yes, that's correct. And the less complicated it gets. And that was also another thing. So we spend then after also a lot of time in measuring, but we also spend a lot of time. We have a sound, what we call a sound master, which is also listening to each of the product and spending time and, looking through all those small details at the end. And that's always been a requirement of them or whatever, that every time you had something or whatever, they're going to say, it was better before and all of that. And measurement can show that also as well. So that was kind of also the design philosophy. The last thing, there's that iconic S-shaped tone arm that Denon also has been using from the start. So it's still there also.
So Emmanuel, obviously the turntable and cartridge, the turntable tone arm cartridge really are an integrated whole. And so in order to help our listeners in terms of picking the right phono cartridge for this turntable, can you talk a little bit about whether the tone arm will be classified as high mass, medium mass, low mass? Because of course that influences what you want to do with your phono cartridge.
Yes, correct. So it's I would say it's a high medium mass.
Okay.
So because it's really at the high, it's 20 grams. So it's a high spectrum of the medium mass. But at the same time also, so the short answer would be, and of course I'm going to have to make that answer, it's optimized for Denon cartridge, right, first and foremost, of course. But at the same time, we're fully aware also that the people want to, I would say, cherry pick cartridge and head shell and all of that. So we supply with the DP-3000NE also a classic Denon head shell, which was also coming from the broadcast world, which is very easy to operate manually also as well. But we also provide or made the configuration of the tone arm to accept everything, I would say, between 15 to 37, 38 grams, including the head shell. And there is a subweight also as well if you have a very heavy, cartridge or head shell, and you can adjust. So we're maybe not covering 100% of all the cartridge which are out there, because some could be, very, very esoteric in some way or whatever. But I'm confident that 90 or 95%, even probably more than that, of all available cartridge or air shell will be able to be mounted on that turntable.
So Emmanuel, the Platter is also unusual in that number one, it is quite heavy. And number two, it does appear to have a material, that black material that seems to be primarily a deadening or dampening material. So maybe you can just talk a little bit about the Platter construction and what you were wanting to achieve.
Yeah, so actually, the initial concept of the turntable and the Platter was without that black part you saw at the bottom, whatever. And that was back into the first listening session with the sound master, that it came with, say, hey, I believe if we had to add a damping material there, whatever, it will sound better. And out of my head, I think we tried 8 or 9 different type of material and Platter. And I saw all of them in our factory in Shirakawa, when we launched the product with the Sound Master, and it actually, demonstrate the difference between some of the different Platter and resonance. It was canceling and all of that. So even if I'm not a golden ear, and I was able sometimes to hear some of the different, but he really believed at the end that the choice that was made was actually the best one possible for that turntable.
So now, Emmanuel, obviously, with a lot of attention paid in this turntable to rotational stability, we've got this now very well done Platter with some unique technologies to it. I've come to understand from you that the integration of the power supply for the motor that's going to turn this turntable, you've really done a lot to be able to maintain absolute rock stable rotational stability from the power supply motor combination. So can you talk a little bit about the engineering insights that you had as you were developing that part of the project?
Yes, no problem. So we knew we had a very solid premium motor that we've been using, on Denon turntable in the past. And the idea there was to say, okay, is there a way we can even further improve what we had? So we start to look at how you control that motor, right? It's a 3-phase AC motor. And so we wanted to know, is there any new things we can integrate there that will ensure that, that rock solid, stable speed around the motor? So we did some research there, and we found that new technology that was mostly used into the industrial world, which is called space vector pulse width modulation. And if you're interested, that's go way beyond even my understanding or my engineering knowledge. You can Google that and look. There's pages and pages of research around that. But the idea there, it's basically, so with a pulse width modulation power supply, you're using a piece of software which is actually controlling the voltage that you're sending to each phase of the motor depending on its position, and make sure that you're not spending anything to a motor that doesn't need to receive it. So there is no variation in the speed, and you have high efficiency. So there's also a sensor that controls the rotation speed, and if there's any variation in load or temperature, whatever, it automatically adjusts itself to always maintain this rotation speed. And that's exactly what you're looking for at a turntable, right? So no matter load, no matter the variation in the voltage, in the power grid, no matter what, that speed will always be 100% accurate. And that is really, really important, of course, for a turntable. And by choosing that design, actually, it also avoids us to remove any way to control or adjust the fine-tune of the speed, because we don't need it anymore. It's all managed by the electronic inside the turntable. So it was actually very, very interesting to dig into that technology and be able to integrate that into a turntable. And for as long as turntable have existed or whatever, it's actually pretty fascinating that we can still innovate and bring new things to turntable.
Emmanuel, it's fascinating to me that you were able to take a very well-established and reliable motor and through electronic and power supply means and software to figure out how to get even more performance out of it. So much so that you don't really need a speed adjustment anymore, because it's always going to be stable no matter what the temperature and other variations might be.
Yeah, and it's actually fascinating because the efficiency also of the motor is improved so much that it almost don't dissipate any heat. So there's no variation. So you can almost leave that turntable spinning for days without any problem. And it will just be there, and it will always be at the speed you choose, and it will not change.
Fascinating. I love hearing about technological innovation like that. It's great. And even the feet on this turntable seem to have gotten special attention, because you have a combination of materials that you've used that, as I understand it, both are beneficial in terms of leveling the turntable, but also in terms of dissipating vibrations, because of course, especially a rock and roller like myself, going to be pounding some heavy volume out of the speakers. You don't want those vibrations coming into the turntable.
Yeah, that was also another attention or focus attention around the feet or whatever. So we went back also to the design from the 70s and look at how we can improve them. There's been a lot of improvement in material and all of that. So the idea, yes, you had those 4 feet that you can adjust in height to perfectly level your turntable. And we knew also we had a pretty heavy turntable also as well. So it was also the idea to have those very, very solid feet that the turntable will rest on and avoid any vibration coming back from the speaker or other external factor, and ensure also that turntable will remain very, very stable.
I would say, Emmanuel, you and the engineering team at Denon have done a fantastic job with this turntable. Is there anything else you would like to share with our viewers?
No, so I would say thank you for that. Yes, there's been a clearly highly passionate team of engineers behind that turntable, and mostly I would say we have I'm going to name one, which is Okazeri-san, which is with the Denon team for probably more than 40 years now, which was actually about to retire. And when we bring that project, he said, no, I want to stay. I want to work on that turntable. And he's still here with us. And I must say, he's been an amazing part of the team there with the sound master in Japan, and all the attention to detail that the Japanese engineer can bring to the table or when they develop a new turntable. And it was also fascinating to be able to, as I mentioned earlier, to continue to find some small innovation, but really mindful innovation to really bring that turntable to the next level. And I will add the last part we haven't really touched on is the industrial design, because here also with the team, there was been a lot of time spent in private detail that most of the people will not pay attention to. But I think we, on top of it, achieve like a new era or a new generation of Denon turntable that pay homage to, I would say, the brand and the origin of the turntable. So when you look at it, you immediately identify it as a Denon product, but it also connects with a more modern interior with that stunning design, which is really great.
Well, Emmanuel, we want to thank you so much for having spent some time with us today to talk about this wonderful DP-3000NE. And we think we're going to enjoy selling this turntable very, very much because it really looks like a winner at the price that it occupies. We hope that you, our listeners, have enjoyed this video. To learn more about Denon and all of our wonderful products, you can visit Gramophone.com and shop Sky by Gramophone, because you will always get a secure checkout with fast and free shipping straight to your door. If there's any chance you can come visit us, we have 3 stores in Maryland, in Timonium, Gaithersburg, and Columbia, Maryland. And check out our Experience Center directly across from the Timonium store, where you will see some spectacular products displayed spectacularly. Please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this video. That helps us out quite a bit. And click that little bell icon so that you're always reminded of our upcoming content. If you can, also visit our Kitchen Design Center in Hunt Valley, Maryland. We look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you for participating and enjoying this video.